I always thought being married meant you were someone's first choice. Turns out, I was wrong about that too. It was past midnight when I heard Cara's voice drifting up from the kitchen, her phone pressed against her ear like she was sharing state secrets. I'd gotten up to grab some water, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors of our old Victorian house. The place had been my pride and joy when we bought it 5 years ago, a fixer-upper that I'd been slowly restoring with my own hands. Now it felt like a museum of better times. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "He's decent enough," Cara was saying, her voice carrying that dismissive tone she usually reserved for discussing restaurant service or cable company representatives. "I mean, Jack's a good interim solution, but I'm still looking for something better. You know what I mean?" Interim solution. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I pressed myself against the wall at the top of the stairs, suddenly feeling like a spy in my own home. My wife of 7 years was rating me like I was a placeholder app on her phone, functional enough until something shinier came along. "Oh, definitely," she continued, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 6 on good days. He's got the whole rugged contractor thing going for him, and he's handy around the house. But Derek's like a solid 9, maybe even a 10 if he keeps hitting the gym like he has been." Derek. I knew that name. Derek Lane, her coworker at the tech startup where she worked as a project manager. The guy with the perfect hair and the luxury sedan who'd been showing up to more and more of Cara's work events. The one she claimed was just a friend from the office. I stood there in my boxer shorts and old hockey t-shirt, listening to my wife discuss my replacement like she was comparing insurance quotes. "The thing is," Cara went on, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "Jack thinks everything's fine. He has no idea I've been exploring other options. It's actually kind of sweet how clueless he is." Sweet. She thought my ignorance was sweet. I crept back to our bedroom, my mind racing. 7 years of marriage, and I was nothing more than a human placeholder, a temporary fix until she could upgrade to the deluxe model. The next morning, Cara acted like nothing had happened. She sat at our kitchen table, scrolling through her phone while sipping coffee from the mug I'd given her last Christmas, the one that said, "World's Best Wife." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Sleep well?" she asked without looking up, her blonde hair perfectly styled even at 7 in the morning. Everything about Cara was always perfect. Her makeup, her clothes, her carefully curated social media presence. She was the kind of woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine, and for years I'd felt lucky to be with her. Now I felt like an idiot. "Like a baby," I lied, pouring myself coffee from the pot she'd made. At least she still made coffee for both of us. Small mercies. "I'll be late tonight," she said, finally looking up from her phone. "Work dinner with the team. We're celebrating the Morrison account." "The Morrison account?" "The one Derek landed last month. We're taking him out to celebrate." Of course they were. I studied her face, looking for any sign of guilt or deception, but Cara had always been good at compartmentalizing. It was one of the things that made her successful in business. Her ability to keep different aspects of her life in separate, organized boxes. "Sounds fun," I managed. "Don't wait up for me either. I've got that restoration project on Elm Street running late." "The Victorian with the water damage?" "That's the one." She nodded and went back to her phone. "Oh, by the way, I might stay at Melanie's place tonight. You know how these work dinners can go. Sometimes we end up talking until all hours." Melanie was Cara's college roommate turned best friend, a social media manager who lived in a trendy downtown apartment. She was also the kind of person who documented every moment of her life online, which made her a convenient alibi for Cara's extracurricular activities. "Sure," I said. "Have fun." After Cara left for work, I sat in my kitchen and tried to process what I'd learned. My marriage was apparently on borrowed time, and I was the only one who didn't know it. I felt like the protagonist in some twisted reality show where everyone else knew the rules except me. I'd built my whole adult life around Cara. My restoration business, Dalton Historic Homes, was successful enough, but I'd turned down bigger projects in other cities because she didn't want to move. I'd bought this house because she fell in love with its potential. I'd even learned to like her pretentious friends and their dinner parties where they discussed wine pairings and artisanal cheese. And for what? To be rated a 6 out of 10 by the woman who was supposed to love me unconditionally? My phone buzzed with a text from Luke Morrison, my best friend and employee. Luke had been working with me since I started the business, and he was one of the few people who knew me well enough to sense when something was wrong. "You okay, boss? You seemed off yesterday." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Just thinking about making some changes." Good changes or bad changes? Depends on your perspective. I spent the rest of the day working on the Elm Street project, trying to lose myself in the familiar rhythm of restoration work. There was something satisfying about taking something old and broken and making it beautiful again. It required patience, skill, and attention to detail, qualities that apparently weren't enough to keep my wife interested. But as I worked, a different kind of plan began forming in my mind. If Cara wanted to treat our marriage like a business transaction, then maybe it was time I started thinking like a businessman too. That evening, I did something I'd never done before in 7 years of marriage. I went through Cara's things. I felt like a criminal as I searched through her dresser drawers and closet, looking for evidence of what I already knew. It didn't take long to find it. Hidden in her jewelry box underneath the pearl necklace her grandmother had left her was a hotel key card from the Riverside Inn. The date on it was from 3 nights ago, the same night she'd claimed to be working late on a presentation. My hands shook as I held the plastic card. This wasn't just emotional cheating or flirting with a coworker. This was the real deal. I photographed the key card with my phone, then put everything back exactly as I'd found it. If Cara wanted to play games, I needed to understand the rules first. The next step was harder. I'd always prided myself on being the kind of man who trusted his wife, who didn't snoop through her phone or check up on her. But trust was apparently a luxury I could no longer afford. Cara's laptop was easier to access than her phone. She'd never bothered to change the password from our wedding date. The irony of that detail wasn't lost on me as I scrolled through her browser history and found exactly what I was looking for. Dating apps. Multiple dating apps. Her profile on one of them made my stomach turn. She'd listed herself as separated and described herself as recently single and ready to explore new possibilities. The photos were recent. I recognized the dress she was wearing in one of them as something she'd bought last month, but it was her messages that really drove the knife home. Dozens of conversations with different men, all of them following the same pattern. She'd flirt, exchange numbers, and then rate them in a group chat with Melanie and 2 other friends I recognized from her work. "Tonight's date gets a 7/10, read one message from last week. "Good conversation, decent job, but not quite Derek material." "Derek's still the front runner?" Melanie had replied. "Oh, definitely. Derek's perfect. He's everything Jack isn't. Ambitious, sophisticated, knows how to dress. Plus, he actually listens when I talk about my career instead of just nodding and going back to his woodworking projects." There it was. 7 years of marriage reduced to a comparison with some guy who probably spent more on hair products than I made in a week. I screenshot everything, creating a digital file of evidence that would have made a private investigator proud. Not because I was planning to use it in a divorce, at least not yet, but because I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The group chat revealed the full scope of Cara's deception. She'd been seeing Derek for at least 2 months, rating other men like they were restaurants on a review app, and discussing her exit strategy from our marriage with the casual tone most people reserved for planning a vacation. "The thing about Jack," she'd written in one particularly brutal message, "is that he's comfortable. He's like wearing sweatpants. Fine for lounging around the house, but not something you want to be seen in public with. Sweatpants. I'd been demoted from interim solution to sweatpants. But the message that really got to me was from just 2 days ago. I'm thinking of telling Jack soon. Not the whole truth, obviously, but enough to start the separation process. Derek thinks I should wait until after his promotion comes through, but I'm getting tired of pretending. So they had a timeline. Derek's promotion, then my dismissal. It was all very organized, very Cara. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of our living room, surrounded by the furniture we'd picked out together, the photos from our honeymoon in Italy, the life we'd built that apparently meant nothing to her. For a moment, I felt something close to despair. 7 years of my life, wasted on someone who saw me as a placeholder. All those nights I'd worked late to afford the things she wanted, all the compromises I'd made, all the dreams I'd deferred. None of it had mattered. But then the despair transformed into something else, something harder and more focused. If Cara wanted to treat our marriage like a business transaction, then maybe it was time I started negotiating from a position of strength. She thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated her opponent. I'd built a successful business from nothing. I'd restored houses that other contractors had written off as hopeless. I knew how to be patient, how to plan, and how to execute a vision that others couldn't see. And right now, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to accomplish. My phone buzzed with a text from Cara. "Staying at Melanie's tonight, don't wait up." I typed back, "Have fun, love you." The love you wasn't true anymore, but Cara didn't need to know that yet. She thought she was controlling the timeline, managing the situation like one of her work projects. But she'd forgotten one important detail. I was the one who knew how to build things from the ground up, and sometimes, before you could build something new, you had to tear down what was already there. The next morning I called in a favor from my old hockey teammate, Danny Rodriguez, who now worked in private security. Danny specialized in the kind of discreet surveillance that divorce lawyers loved, the type that could document infidelity without breaking any laws. "You sure about this, Jack?" Danny asked as we sat in his office, surrounded by monitors and high-tech equipment that looked like something from a spy movie. "Once you go down this road, there's no going back." "She's already gone down the road," I replied. "I'm just catching up." Danny nodded and pulled out a contract. Standard package includes vehicle tracking, photographic evidence, and a detailed report of activities. We're talking about a week of surveillance, maybe 2 if they're being careful. "They're not being careful," I said, thinking about the hotel key card and the casual way Cara had been discussing her affair in group chats. "She thinks I'm too stupid to figure it out." "Her mistake," Danny said with a grin. "I remember you on the ice. You were always 3 moves ahead of everyone else." That afternoon, I made my second call, to Tom Bradley, the best divorce attorney in the city. Tom had handled the divorce of another contractor I knew, and he had a reputation for being thorough and ruthless when the situation called for it. "Adultery cases are tricky in no-fault states," Tom explained during our consultation. "But if we can prove she's been hiding assets or planning to defraud you in the divorce, that's a different story." "What kind of assets?" "Bank accounts, investments, anything she might have been moving around in preparation for leaving. A lot of cheating spouses start financial planning before they start emotional planning." That gave me an idea. I spent the evening going through our joint financial records, looking for any unusual transactions or changes in Cara's spending patterns. What I found was interesting. She'd opened a new savings account 3 months ago, one that wasn't linked to our joint accounts. She'd been making regular transfers into it, small amounts that wouldn't be noticeable unless you were looking for them. But the real revelation came when I checked her credit card statements. Derek wasn't just her affair partner. He was an expensive one. Dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of, hotel rooms that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month, shopping trips to stores that sold the kind of clothes I'd never seen her wear at home. She was living a double life, and I was financing it. My phone rang, interrupting my financial detective work. It was Cara. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "How was your day?" "Good," I lied. "Productive. How about you?" "Oh, the usual chaos at the office. Listen, I'm going to be working late again tonight. Derek's got this big presentation tomorrow, and the whole team is staying to help him prepare." "That's nice of you," I said. "Very supportive." "Well, you know how it is. We all have to look out for each other." The casual way she lied to me was almost impressive. No hesitation, no guilt in her voice. Just smooth deception, delivered with the confidence of someone who'd had plenty of practice. "I'll probably grab dinner with the team afterward," she continued. "Don't wait up." "I won't," I promised. "Have fun with your teamwork." After she hung up, I called Danny. "Tonight's the night," I said. She just gave me her schedule. "We'll be ready," he assured me. "By tomorrow morning, you'll know exactly what your wife's been up to." I spent the evening in my workshop trying to lose myself in a restoration project. A 1920s dining room table that had been damaged by water and neglect. There was something therapeutic about the work, about taking something broken and making it whole again. But as I sanded away layers of old varnish and water stains, I couldn't help thinking about my marriage. Some things could be restored, brought back to their original beauty with enough time and effort, but others were too damaged, too rotten at the core to be worth saving. The question was, which category did my relationship with Cara fall into? My phone buzzed with a text from Luke. "Beer tonight? You've seemed off lately?" I considered it for a moment, then typed back, "Rain check. Got some things to figure out. Anything I can help with?" "Not yet, but soon." Luke had been my friend since high school, and he'd been there through all the major moments of my adult life, my wedding, the launch of my business, the good times and the bad. If anyone deserved to know what was happening, it was him. But first, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Tomorrow, Danny would give me the evidence I needed to understand the full scope of Cara's betrayal. Then I could start planning my response. I worked on the table until nearly midnight, methodically removing decades of damage and neglect. By the time I finished, the original wood was visible again, scarred but beautiful, damaged but not destroyed. As I cleaned up my tools, I realized that restoration wasn't always about bringing something back to its original state. Sometimes, it was about revealing what had been hidden underneath, stripping away the layers of deception and neglect to expose the truth beneath. Tomorrow, I would start stripping away the layers of my marriage to see what was really underneath. And then, I would decide whether it was worth saving or whether it was time to start over with something new. Danny's report arrived by email at exactly 9 a.m., along with a folder of photographs that told the story I'd been dreading to confirm. The images were professionally shot and devastatingly clear. Cara and Derek entering the Riverside Inn together. Cara and Derek having dinner at Chez Laurent, the French restaurant downtown that I'd always wanted to take her to, but she'd claimed was too stuffy. Cara and Derek shopping together at the kind of high-end boutiques where a single dress cost more than most people's rent. But it was the final set of photos that really drove the point home. Derek's hand on the small of Cara's back as they walked into his downtown apartment building. The same intimate gesture I'd thought was reserved for me. The surveillance report was equally thorough. Danny's team had documented 3 separate meetings over the past week, all during times when Cara had told me she was working late or staying with friends. They'd also managed to capture audio from one of their restaurant conversations, thanks to a strategically placed listening device. "I can't wait much longer," Derek's voice said through my laptop speakers. "This whole sneaking around thing is getting old." "I know," Cara replied. "But Jack's not stupid. If I move too fast, he might get suspicious and make things complicated." "How complicated can it be? You tell him you want a divorce, he moves out, we move forward. Simple." "It's not that simple. There's the house, the business, all our shared assets. If I handle this wrong, I could end up with a lot less than I deserve. Deserve. The word hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? Derek asked. Jack's business is worth more than he realizes. That old Victorian house we live in. It's in a neighborhood that's about to explode in value. There are 3 major development projects planned within 6 blocks. And his client list includes some very wealthy people who pay premium prices for historic restoration work. I paused the audio, my hands shaking with anger. She'd been evaluating our marriage like a corporate acquisition, calculating the value of everything I'd built, and figuring out how to maximize her share. The conversation continued. My lawyer says that if I can prove Jack's been hiding assets or undervaluing the business, I could get up to 60% of everything in the divorce settlement. Is he hiding assets? Not intentionally, but he's terrible with paperwork, and he undercharges for a lot of his work. It would be easy to make it look like he's been deliberately underreporting income. I felt sick. Not only was she cheating on me, she was planning to destroy my reputation and steal my business in the process. The audio file ended with Derek suggesting they speed up the timeline and Cara agreeing to start laying the groundwork for our separation. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something I'd never experienced before. A cold, calculating anger that had nothing to do with emotion and everything to do with strategy. Cara thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers, but she'd made a crucial error in judgment. She'd assumed that because I was honest and trusting, I was also naive and helpless. She was about to learn the difference. My first call was to Tom Bradley. "I've got the evidence," I said, "and it's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" "She's not just cheating. She's planning to commit fraud in the divorce proceedings." Tom's voice sharpened with interest. "Tell me everything." I spent an hour walking Tom through Danny's report and the audio recordings. By the end of the conversation, Tom was practically purring with satisfaction. "This is good," he said. "Very good. With evidence like this, we can not only protect your assets, we can go on the offensive. Adultery might not matter much in a no-fault divorce, but fraud? That's a different story entirely. What's our next move?" "We prepare, quietly. Get all your financial records in order, document the true value of your business, and make sure everything's properly accounted for. Meanwhile, you don't change anything about your behavior. Let her think she's still in control." "For how long?" "Until she makes her move. Then we hit her with everything at once." My second call was to my accountant, Sarah Chen, who'd been handling my business finances since I started the company. Sarah was thorough, honest, and had always encouraged me to be more aggressive about pricing my services. "Jack, you've been undercharging for years," she said when I explained the situation. "Your work is easily worth 30% more than what you've been billing. I've got documentation going back 5 years that proves it. Can you put together a comprehensive report on the business's actual value?" "Already working on it. And Jack? I'm sorry about Cara. I always thought she seemed calculating." That afternoon, I made one more call, to my insurance agent. If Cara was planning to claim I'd been hiding assets, I wanted to make sure every piece of property, every tool, every aspect of my business was properly documented and valued. By evening, I had a team of professionals working to build a complete picture of my financial situation. But more importantly, I had a plan. Cara came home that night acting like nothing had happened, chattering about her day at work and asking about my restoration projects with the same fake interest she'd been showing for months. "How's the Elm Street house coming along?" she asked over dinner, takeout Chinese food that we ate while scrolling through our respective phones. "Good," I said. "Actually, I got some interesting news today. The Historical Society wants to feature it in their annual tour. Could be great publicity for the business." "That's wonderful," she said, not looking up from her phone. "You deserve more recognition for your work." The casual way she said it, like she wasn't planning to steal half my business in a few weeks, was almost admirable in its shamelessness. Speaking of recognition, I continued, I'm thinking about expanding, maybe hiring a few more guys, taking on bigger projects. Really? For the first time all evening, I had her full attention. How big are we talking? Big enough that I'd need to restructure the business, maybe incorporate properly, get some real accounting systems in place. I could practically see the dollar signs in her eyes. The bigger my business got, the more she'd be able to claim in the divorce. That sounds like a great idea, she said. You should definitely pursue it. I will, I promised. I'm meeting with some people tomorrow to discuss the details. What I didn't tell her was that those people were my lawyer, my accountant, and a forensic financial analyst who specialized in protecting business owners from fraudulent divorce claims. Cara went to bed early, claiming she had a headache. I stayed up late in my workshop, not working on any restoration projects, but planning something entirely different. She thought she was hunting me, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I knew she was coming. 3 days later, everything changed. I was working late at the Elm Street project when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You need to see this. Meet me at Murphy's Bar on 5th Street. 8 p.m. A friend. Attached was a photo that made me freeze. Cara and Derek at what looked like a real estate office, shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit. In the background, I could see documents spread across a conference table and a laptop displaying what looked like property listings. I arrived at Murphy's 15 minutes early and found a corner booth where I could watch the door. At exactly 8 p.m., a woman I didn't recognize walked in, mid-30s, professional dress, the kind of person who looked like she could handle herself in a fight. Jack Dalton? She asked, sliding into the booth across from me. That's me. And you are? Rebecca Martinez. I'm Derek's girlfriend. Or rather, I was Derek's girlfriend until about 4 hours ago. The pieces clicked into place. You found out about Cara. Found out? Rebecca laughed bitterly. I've known for weeks. I hired the same private investigator you did, Danny Rodriguez. Small world. She pulled out a tablet and showed me a series of photos that matched the ones Danny had taken for me. The difference is, I decided to dig a little deeper. Want to know what your wife and my ex-boyfriend have really been up to? Tell me. They're not just having an affair. They're planning to steal your business and use the money to start their own company. Derek's been feeding Cara inside information about commercial real estate deals, and she's been using your credit and business connections to secure properties they plan to flip. She swiped to another photo, the real estate office I'd seen in the text message. This was taken this afternoon. They just put an offer on a historic property in the Arts District. Guess whose business credentials and financial information they used as collateral? My hands clenched into fists. Mine. Yours. They've been forging your signature on loan applications, using your business reputation to secure deals you know nothing about. If those deals go bad, you're the one who'll be liable for the debt. I stared at the evidence, feeling a cold fury building in my chest. This wasn't just adultery or even divorce fraud. This was identity theft and financial fraud on a massive scale. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Rebecca's smile was sharp as a knife. Because Derek made the mistake of bragging about it. He told me the whole plan last night, thinking I'd be impressed by his cleverness. He wanted me to invest in their new venture. And instead, you decided to warn me. I decided to destroy him, she corrected. Derek thinks he's smarter than everyone else, but he forgot one important detail. I'm a forensic accountant who specializes in financial fraud cases. I know exactly how to unravel what they've built. She handed me a flash drive. Everything's on there. Bank records, forged documents, email communications between Cara and Derek discussing their plans. Enough evidence to send them both to prison for a very long time. I pocketed the flash drive, my mind racing. What do you want in return? I want Derek to lose everything. His job, his reputation, his freedom. And I want Cara to go down with him. That makes two of us, Rebecca leaned forward, her eyes glittering with the same cold anger I'd been feeling for days. Then let's give them exactly what they deserve. We spent the next hour planning our strategy. Rebecca had already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and provided them with preliminary evidence of the fraud. She'd also reached out to Derek's employer and Cara's boss, laying the groundwork for their professional destruction. The key, she explained, is timing. We need to hit them simultaneously on multiple fronts: legal, professional, and personal. If we give them time to coordinate their defense or destroy evidence, they might slip through the cracks. When? Tomorrow. Derek's supposed to close on the Arts District property at 2 p.m. The FBI will be waiting for him. I felt a savage satisfaction at the thought. And Cara? She'll be arrested at her office at the same time. I've already provided the authorities with evidence of her involvement in the fraud. That night, I went home to find Cara packing a suitcase. She looked up when I walked into our bedroom, her face flushed with what I now recognized as guilt. Going somewhere? I asked casually. Just a work retreat, she said, not meeting my eyes. Derek organized a team-building weekend at some resort upstate, very last minute. Sounds fun. When will you be back? Sunday night, probably. Maybe Monday morning. I nodded, knowing she'd never make it to any resort. By tomorrow afternoon, she'd be in federal custody. Well, have a good time, I said. Try not to work too hard. She kissed me goodbye the next morning, the same perfunctory peck on the cheek she'd been giving me for months. I watched her drive away in her BMW, knowing it would be the last time I'd see her as a free woman. At 2:15 p.m., my phone rang. It was Rebecca. It's done, she said. Derek was arrested at the real estate office. They got him on fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy charges. The FBI seized his computer, his phone, and all the documents related to their scheme. And Cara? Arrested at her office 20 minutes ago. Her coworkers got quite a show. FBI agents, handcuffs, the whole 9 yards. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. 7 years of marriage ended not with arguments or tears, but with federal charges and perp walks. There's more, Rebecca continued. The investigation is just getting started. They found evidence of at least 6 other fraudulent deals, totaling over $2 million in illegal loans and forged documents. $2 million. The scope of their betrayal was staggering. That evening, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by the tools and projects that represented my honest work, my legitimate success. Everything Cara and Derek had tried to steal had been built with my own hands, earned through years of careful craftsmanship and satisfied customers. They'd thought they could take it all away with lies and forged signatures. Instead, they'd destroyed themselves. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Cara. I get one phone call. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. There was nothing left to talk about. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and the slow process of rebuilding my life. The local news picked up the story. Local business owner targeted in $1 million fraud scheme. And suddenly, everyone in town knew what Cara and Derek had tried to do to me. The support from my community was overwhelming. Clients called to offer their condolences and to assure me they'd continue working with my company. Other contractors reached out to share their own stories of betrayal and recovery. Even people I barely knew stopped me on the street to express their outrage at what had happened. But it was Luke's reaction that meant the most to me. I knew something was wrong, he said as we sat in my workshop, sharing a beer after a long day of work. Cara always seemed like she was calculating something, you know? Like she was constantly evaluating whether you were worth her time. She was, I said. Literally. She had a rating system. Luke shook his head in disgust. 7 years, and she never saw what the rest of us could see. What's that? That you're one of the good ones, Jack. You're honest, you work hard, You treat people right. Those are rare qualities. I appreciated his loyalty, but I wasn't feeling particularly good about myself. The whole experience had left me questioning everything: my judgment, my instincts, my ability to trust anyone ever again. The thing is, I said, I should have seen it coming. There were signs. Maybe. But that's not who you are. You're not suspicious or paranoid or calculating. You trusted your wife because that's what normal people do in a marriage. The legal proceedings moved faster than I'd expected. With Rebecca's evidence and the FBI's investigation, the case against Cara and Derek was airtight. They'd been caught red-handed with forged documents, fraudulent loan applications, and a paper trail that clearly showed their intent to defraud multiple financial institutions. Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, claiming his client had been manipulated by Cara. But the evidence showed that Derek had been the mastermind behind the real estate fraud, using his knowledge of commercial properties and development deals to identify targets. Cara's defense was even more pathetic. Her lawyer argued that she'd been coerced by Derek, that she was a victim of an abusive relationship who'd been forced to participate in the fraud against her will. The prosecution demolished that argument by playing recordings of Cara's phone conversations with Derek, where she'd enthusiastically discussed their plans and even suggested new ways to exploit my business connections. She's not a victim, the prosecutor told the judge during one hearing I attended. She's a calculating predator who targeted her own husband for financial gain. Both Cara and Derek were ultimately sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 3 years. They were also ordered to pay full restitution for the money they'd stolen, plus penalties and interest. The civil lawsuit was even more satisfying. Tom Bradley had filed suit against both of them for damages to my business reputation, emotional distress, and the cost of undoing the financial chaos they'd created. The judge awarded me everything I'd asked for, plus punitive damages. They'll be paying you back for the rest of their lives, Tom explained after the verdict. Even after they get out of prison, their wages will be garnished until every penny is repaid. But the real victory wasn't financial, it was personal. The whole experience had stripped away my illusions about my marriage, but it had also revealed who my real friends were. People like Luke, who'd stood by me without question. People like Rebecca, who'd risked her own safety to expose the truth. People like Danny and Tom and Sarah, who'd used their professional skills to protect me. I'd lost a wife, but I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever realized, and that I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. 6 months after Cara's arrest, I was working late in my shop when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Rebecca standing on my porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing a smile I hadn't seen since the night we'd planned our revenge. "Thought you might want to celebrate," she said. "Derek's appeal was denied today. He's officially stuck with his sentence." "That is worth celebrating," I agreed, stepping aside to let her in. We sat in my living room, the same room where I discovered Cara's betrayal, now redecorated and purged of all traces of my former wife, and talked about everything that had happened. "Do you ever regret it?" Rebecca asked. "Going after them so aggressively?" I considered the question seriously. "No," I said finally. "They made a choice to betray people who trusted them. They made a choice to commit fraud and theft. They made a choice to destroy other people's lives for their own benefit. I just made sure they faced the consequences of those choices." Some people would say we went too far. "Some people have never been betrayed by someone they loved," I replied. "Some people have never had their life's work stolen by someone they trusted. Some people don't understand that there are consequences for treating other human beings like disposable objects." Rebecca nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Derek used to say that nice guys finish last, that people like us were suckers for playing by the rules. Turns out he was wrong about that too." We finished the wine and talked until well past midnight, sharing stories about our recovery, our plans for the future, and the strange bond that had formed between us through shared betrayal and mutual revenge. As Rebecca was leaving, she paused at the door and looked back at me. "You know, Derek was wrong about something else, too." "What's that?" "He said you were just a simple contractor, that you weren't smart enough to figure out what they were doing. But you're not simple at all. You're just decent, and there's a big difference between those two things." After she left, I sat in my workshop and looked around at the projects I was working on. A 1940s dining set that would be beautiful when restored, a Victorian mantelpiece that had survived a fire, an antique desk that had been damaged by neglect but wasn't beyond saving. All of them were fixable. All of them could be restored to their original beauty with enough time, patience, and skill. Unlike my marriage, which had been rotten at the core from the beginning. I picked up my tools and got back to work, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of restoration. Outside, the night was quiet and peaceful, and for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: contentment. Cara had called me an interim solution, a placeholder until something better came along. But she'd been wrong about that, just like she'd been wrong about so many other things. I wasn't a placeholder. I wasn't temporary. I was exactly where I belonged, doing exactly what I was meant to do, surrounded by people who valued me for who I really was. And that was worth more than all her ratings and calculations combined.